Would you have preferred to have never had your vision or to have lost it? Hello and welcome to the Blindseyepodcast, the podcast discussing everything you did and didn't want to know about being blind. My name is Connor, and today we're having a chat with Kirsten. Now, Kirsten kindly agreed to be interviewed by me, and our topic was being blind from birth, because obviously there's some differences between people who were blind from birth and people who lost their vision later in life. So we have a bit of a chat about how you know what colours are, how do you know what shapes are, how do you associate with the world when you're younger and how you learn that. We also spoke about how you dream, or if you dream, and we also had a bit of a chat about that question that a lot of people who can't see get asked around, would you have preferred to have never had your vision or to have lost it? And yeah, I think it was a good discussion, and again, thanks to Kirsten for coming on. As always, before we get going, you can like, share, subscribe to the show. Every little bit helps. Or leave a review on whatever podcast platform it is that you're listening on, and that helps me out. So let's get going. All right. So thank you very much, Kirsten, for joining me. I guess, firstly, the reason I wanted to do this episode is because I lost my sight when I was 12, and I always get the question of, what would you have preferred? Would you have preferred to lose your sight or have sight and all that kind of stuff? And it's a question I always get. I would imagine it's a question a lot of people who are blind get, from the public. And I guess because I don't know anything about somebody who's been blind from birth, I thought that would make a good episode. So I guess, would you like to just introduce yourself and what your eye condition is and how much you can or can't see? And we'll take it from there.
So I'm Kirsten, I'm 21. I live in Newcastle, or just slightly out of that in East Maitland. And my eye condition has a couple of aspects to it. So the full name of it is septo-optic dysplasia, but the vision side of it is known as optic nerve hyperplasia. And I also have other underlying medical conditions that make the full spectrum of my condition. I'm pretty much, I wouldn't say totally blind, but I can't really use my vision, otherwise it just does not end very well at all.
Yeah, it's a bit like myself. Like I have light perception, but I can't really rely on it. If I have my good days, with it, then, all well and good, but you definitely can't. And funnily enough, actually, mine is optic nerve as well. So there's a little link between the two. So, yeah, so that's always fun. But yeah, I'm the same. Like if I'm walking somewhere and I know I'm walking under an awning, I'm walking up to a car, cool, but I could never ever rely on the fact that my eyes weren't playing tricks on me.
Oh, my eyes sometimes, even with my vision, and I'm very glad it's been a lot more helpful since I got my guide dog, but sometimes my eyes will think that there's something there when there's not.
Okay, yeah, because is there a name for that? Is that Charles Burnett syndrome or something like that?
I don't know what it is, but my guide dog's just learned to stop.
Yeah, I don't trust yourself.
I've been diagnosed with anything, and I sort of don't talk about that aspect too often because, hey, people might think I'm slightly nuts.
Aren't we all slightly nuts?
Slightly.
So, I guess the thing that I always wanted to know, and I guess it would depend on whether somebody is, I guess, completely black blind, which I've tried to explain before, is probably quite a small amount of us, so to speak. But what would you say you experience? Like, so if your eyes, like, what do you get out of your sight? Is it just basically, hearing and touch and smell, or is there that other sense there? It's just not particularly working well. How would you describe that?
It's mostly hearing, touch, and smell. I mean, occasionally if my eyes are working particularly well or I'm looking really closely at something, I could probably see it, but
Mhm.
I again shouldn't use my vision.
It's always a thing because again, like I get asked that, well, like what do you see, and it's very hard to explain to somebody, and I guess it would be different for everybody, so it's not the
Yeah.
kind of thing you can really generalize. Uh,
No,
what
it's not
what
like you can put someone in one box and say, "Oh, that's the box."
exactly like that's the hard part. I mean, and so I'd guess as well, like, do you recall how you learn things as a child? I guess that are usually visually learned. So, like for myself, I could see until I was 12. So my stimulation was eyes. You know, if there was a toy nearby, I'd want to get to it because I could see it. So that's what would maybe go to it. But I have heard that apparently with children who are blind from birth, because that extra stimulation isn't necessarily there, that then knowing these kinds of things has to be kind of figured out another way. So how do you remember how you learned that kind of stuff?
Um, a lot of like feeling things. I can't remember the full details, but I think somewhere along the line, my mum said something about it took me a while to get used to different textures.
Mm-hmm.
And so it had to be explained to me very, very slowly. But I don't remember the finer points. But a lot of the time now, if I want to know something, I'll just ask to feel it, or, that my parents might use their finger and try and draw that shape onto the back of my hand or something so that way I can kind of understand what shape it is.
Yeah, so because I guess that's what I mean. Like I because I could see there, I know what a square is, but I guess for somebody who can't see and who's never been able to see particularly well or if at all, then that needs to be completely tactile. Somebody needs to say what you're feeling is a square, so you can make that
Yeah.
association. Is that the case?
Yeah, that pretty much is. You kind of have to associate what you're feeling with the word. And I mean, if you can see a little bit, then you might see what the shapes are. So for a while there, until I actually discovered I was um supposed to be in blindness, I was low vision for a fair bit.
Mhm.
And so I'm sort of able to associate different shapes, but again, not well.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's
But
the thing.
that goes into a lot of like education stuff and people not understanding for a long time.
Well, yeah. Well, I guess I mean, obviously it's not the same, but I guess I noticed, I'd have the same thing where I'm out and about and I don't realize something's going on because I can't see it. And I guess
Yeah.
it's kind of the same thing where if you don't know something is around you, you don't know it exists, so you don't even know if you want it or how to associate. Like if you walk into a shop, somebody says, "Oh, do you want to go shopping?" I'm like, "Why? I can't window shop. I can't walk past and go, oh, that looks nice." So as far as I know, it doesn't exist. And I guess it's kind of the
Yeah.
same if you're younger. How do you know what these things are if you've never been purposefully exposed to them with
Yeah.
proper education?
And actually just on the subject of shopping, you go some with somebody who's like, can see, and they're like just stopping at the window and you just kind of go, well, I can't see. I've got to wander into the shop to work out what it is.
Yeah, exactly. It's. I always find that thing. I guess as well. Like I have that previous knowledge, but I mean, I lost my sight 20 years ago, so somebody could say anything to me now, and I'm imagining what this thing might be 20 years ago, which could be completely different from what it is now. So I guess it's probably the same kind of thing if for all of us, just with different kinds of extremes or severities based on how
Yeah.
long you've been blind. Um, the big one I get myself, and I was really interested to know because I never actually asked somebody who's been blind from birth, but do you dream and how?
Yes, it's kind of, this is a really hard to explain. It's sort of like from what I'm able to gauge in the real world, it's sort of like forming those pictures in my mind of what I think things would look like.
Mhm.
So it's sort of like combination of imagination and sort of pictures. But
Okay,
yes, I do.
so it is pictures.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I've heard from other people that maybe have never seen it all, and say that their dreams are kind of sounds or things like that. But for myself,
Combination.
I can't imagine that because see, even though I've been blind for 20 years, I only ever dream in full vision. And it's weird because in my dreams, I still think I'm sighted because in my dreams, I can still see perfectly. And then I'll be walking around with a cane or a dog, but I'm actually looking at everything and seeing it perfectly. And then
Yeah.
if somebody says something to me in the dream about you need to read this, I say, oh no, I can't, I'm blind, but I can see the words written on the page. So it's really weird how your
It's
mind
yeah, it's a
messes with you.
strange one.
Yeah, like I guess that was always the big thing with me. I was like, well, how does somebody who's maybe never seen or maybe never seen that well dream? But I guess your brain finds a way.
It does.
Yeah,
It just finds a way to dream.
yeah. It's and I suppose anyway, like when you think about it, dreams are figments of the imagination. It's not like you dream what
Yeah.
happened to you. It's kind of like a bastardized version of what happened to you. You know,
Yeah.
it's so so I suppose there's plenty of places for it to go. It doesn't have to be what you've actually seen.
Pretty
Um,
much.
so I guess with that, and I know we've already kind of touched on it, how would you say that you make associations to the visual world? So I know you have some kind of vision, but like colors, for example. So again, because I could see if somebody says to me the sky is dark blue, I know what that means. But I always wondered from somebody who's been blind from birth, is there issues with that? And I guess it's different for different people. But what was your experience with that kind of stuff?
Um, so during the time before they sent me into like full braille and full blindness category, I have what they called saturated color. So I do have some color, but it's like it's not full color. But I've learnt over time, like speaking of the weather, if someone was to say to me, "Oh, the sky is blue," to me, that means I can see sort of the light. So I go, oh, it's a light day. That means the sky must be blue.
Okay.
Or if it's overcast and cloudy, I'll go, oh, it's dark. So that means it must be grey.
Okay. And but would you have you actually experienced, I guess, what blue is? Or is it
No, I wouldn't say
association?
I have.
Okay, okay. Yeah, because that was the part, and I know, and I suppose it's hard because like with this, it's almost hard to find a language to speak
Mm,
because it's like I guess it's kind of like talking across cultures. I mean, not that it's a different culture, but I guess that's the best way I can explain it. It's somebody from another part of the world says, "This is what we call this," and you come from another part of the world where you're like, "I don't know, what do you mean?"
it's
You know, it's finding
yeah,
that like common association.
yeah. It's. I kind of think of it. It's like say a person from I don't know Germany speaking to say somebody like us from Australia.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
it's like they speak in German and we're speaking Australian.
yeah, and you could be speaking about the same thing, but it's like how do you know you're speaking about the same thing?
Yeah.
You know, it's and I always found that tricky. And again, I've always gotten these questions, but as somebody who you could see, I can't answer these questions. So, and I don't want to try and
Yeah.
answer these questions. Hence why I've asked you to be on the show. But
That's all right.
that's you know, these are all the things I guess that everybody gets asked, no matter who they are. And to be honest, I probably think these are the questions everybody gets asked.
Yeah. It's actually kind of funny because the way I associate with weather quite often, and I remember this one distinctly from year nine, there was a very bad thunderstorm and I couldn't explain it to the teacher in proper English. I just said, look, it's really dark over there. And he didn't understand. And
Mm.
then he looked over in the direction I was pointing and goes, oh, that doesn't look good.
Yeah, well,
So I picked,
yeah, well, I guess like it is that thing of just trying to make had like that clear association between the two. I mean, in that case, it sounds like it worked, thankfully. But I guess you always find a way. I suppose that's probably the main thing
mm,
is there's always a way to work this stuff out, even if it's a bit kind of convoluted and not what the general public would think.
yeah.
Would that be your experience?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be something I would say is sometimes, you try and explain something and like you're trying your best, but they just don't understand it. And it just sort of takes them 5, 10 minutes to go, oh,
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, and in our 5 or 10 minutes, you might need to have gone to a shop or a cafe. But
Or
anyway,
somewhere.
yeah. But anyway, and I guess the last question I really had for you, which is where we started. I get these questions about would I have rather lost my sight uh, from birth? So then, can you lose something you've never had, or is it better to have had it and then you don't have the association problems? How do you feel about all that kind of stuff, or those questions, or what's your typical example? Like, what would your response be if you get asked that question?
Well, for the start, I've never had it, so I don't know what it's really like to fully lose it.
Yeah,
So, whereas in your case, you know what it's like to have sight and have to go through the whole process of transitioning and losing it, whereas I've never had that.
yeah. Well,
I
that's
don't know any different.
well, yeah. That's generally been my answer, but I've never actually asked the question of somebody who was in the opposite position to me, because that's usually my take on it. On one hand, nobody wants to lose something, so you almost think, oh, it'll be better. But to just have never had it, and then all you know is what you know, and you don't know anything different. But then at the same time, there's the other part of you going, well, from the association point of view, if my mate says to me, oh, there's a good looking blonde haired girl walking past, I know what blonde is, as an example. So I guess it's hard to, because yes, I can't do anything about that or see that, but I guess I would have a better understanding of what that means.
Mm.
So that's why my usual answer to that is I don't think there's one right or wrong answer, because
No,
there's
there is.
pros and cons to both.
Well, yeah, like you look at it, when you're born blind, you don't have it to start with, so you don't know what difference. But if you lose it, there are a couple of things that you don't have when you're born blind that you do have when you lose. So,
Yeah.
for an example, core body strength and gross motor skills.
Mm.
You get those, and they're very, very visually learned. Like you can't really. It is very hard to learn them as a blind person. And
So
being born blind, you don't have them.
would that be because you're not moving around trying to get things as much? Is that kind
I'm
of the premise?
I'm not sure of the finer points of it, but I have been told that it is a thing. So like, and also too, so like, you said you lost yours at 12, so you'd have 12 years of core body development and gross motor skills, whereas I don't have those 12 years.
Okay. See, yeah,
So
I
there are
never knew
pros and
that.
cons to both.
Well, yeah, because on the flip side, like I don't know Braille. I've never learned Braille, and I was told when my vision started to go, "Hey, Braille's dying. The internet's the future. Like computers of the future. Don't learn Braille." And at the time, look, thankfully, I've never really been in a position where I needed to know Braille, because I already had literacy. I knew how to spell, I knew punctuations and all that kind of stuff. So the computer was good enough. But then at certain times, I kind of think, well, if I was born blind, I would have just had to have learned Braille. That would have been, you know, the only
Yeah,
way.
and I mean, the whole subject of Braille is a whole nother debate.
Yeah.
That is just a giant mess.
Yeah, I know exactly, but I guess it's one of those things, like, because I often get that as well with, like, my vision went from, I think it started happening in the July of 2002, and by Christmas of that year, so that like 6 months later, it was where it is now. So medically, that happened quickly, but then there's other eye conditions where it deteriorates over decades, and so in some ways that's harder to get used to, because you always have some kind of vision, whereas in
And
some
you
ways,
never know how much time you're going to have either.
well, yeah, and like, I mean, and even I know, even though I experienced a little bit of it, you have your days where you still have vision, and you go, fairly sure that light is green, and then you walk over and you realize your eyes are playing tricks on you, and it's
Yep.
not green, and so you're okay until you're not, and then that might
Yeah.
be the time you're stuck in the middle of a road, you know.
Ooh.
Whereas like for
No.
me, because it happened so quickly, which is terrible, at the same time it meant I had to get with the program pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So I guess that's where all the different kinds of conditions come in, because some things happen quickly, some things happen from birth, some things take forever. So there is no one size fits all to
No.
any of this. And even probably people with the same conditions have different experiences with those eye conditions. So even then, there's no exact generalizations you can make.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. Well, look, that was basically it. That was my questions. And thank you very much for speaking with me. I really appreciate it. Again, it was stuff that I've always been asked by the people that I didn't feel I could answer, but it was also things that I've never actually asked any of my mates who were blind from birth or anything myself. So it was a good learning opportunity for a few reasons there. But look, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me, and yeah, I'll speak to you later.
All right.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Bye. So that was my interview with Kirsten. I really appreciate her coming on the show and having a chat to me about all that. There was definitely some stuff in there that even I didn't know. So I hope that was enjoyable. As always, you can get in touch with the show by emailing blindseyepodcast@gmail.com. That's BLINDSEYE podcast@gmail.com. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram if you search for Blindseye Podcast. I'm on Twitter @BlindseyePod. And if you just want one place to find everything, including all those links and all the episodes, just go to blindseyepodcast.com, and I will speak to you next week. Cheers.